Hello. We are continuing our discussion on civil rights and specifically how the civil rights movement gained ground. We are still in the textbook, Prentice Hall, United States History, Modern America. It is available at the National Emergency Archives of the National Emergency Library. Without further ado, let's continue. So, today we're going to talk about protests and confrontations and how they intensified. In the fall of 1962 and spring of 1963, protests against racial discrimination intensified. The protesters put pressure on the federal government to help break down legal or de jure segregation. Meredith integrates the University of Mississippi. One struggle that gained international attention involved James Meredith. Meredith was an Air Force veteran who sought to enroll at the all white University of Mississippi, known as Ole Miss. In September of 1962, with support of the NAACP, Meredith won a federal court case that ordered the university to desegregate. Civil rights activist Medgar Evers was instrumental in this effort. Mississippi Governor Ross Barnett was determined to prevent the integration of the university. The issue became a standoff between the governor and the federal government. On September 30th, rumors of Meredith's arrival on the university campus began to spread. Federal marshals had been assigned to protect him. Over the course of the night, a full-scale riot erupted, with federal marshals battling white protesters intent on scaring Meredith away. As the rioting took place, President Kennedy addressed the nation on television. Americans are free to disagree with the law, but not to disobey it, he declared. For any government of laws, no man, however prominent and powerful, is entitled to defy a court of law. The rioting went on throughout the night. By the time it ended, 160 people had been injured and 2 men had been killed. The following morning, Meredith registered as a student and took his first class. He graduated from Ole Miss in 1963 and went on to obtain his law degree from Columbia University in New York City. Tragically, Medgar Evers was assassinated on his front doorstep in June of 1963. 3 years later, Meredith himself was shot and nearly killed. Both shootings stand as historical reminders of the high cost of fighting racial discrimination. King campaigns in Birmingham. In the spring of 1963, Martin Luther King Jr. and the SCLC targeted Birmingham, Alabama for a major civil rights campaign. They chose Birmingham because of its reputation as the most segregated city in the South. The campaign began nonviolently at first, with protest marches and sit-ins. City officials got a court order prohibiting the demonstrations. On Good Friday, April 12, 1963, King decided to violate the order and join the demonstration personally, even though he knew it would lead to his arrest. From his jail cell, King wrote a letter explaining why he and other civil rights activists were tired of waiting for reform. For years now, I have heard the word wait. It rings in the ear of every Negro with piercing familiarity. This wait has always meant never. One of the most poignant passages of the letter describes King's concern about the impact of discrimination on his children. Perhaps it is easy for those who have never felt the stinging darts of segregation to say wait, but when you suddenly find your tongue twisted and your speech stammering as you seek to explain to your 6-year-old daughter why she can't go to the public amusement park that has just been advertised on television, and see tears welling up in her eyes when she is told that the fun town is closed to colored children, then you will understand why we find it difficult to wait. Martin Luther King Jr., Letter from Birmingham Jail, 1963. After King was released from jail, the SCLC increased the frequency of demonstrations. For the first time, school children joined the freedom marches. Finally, Birmingham's Public Safety Commissioner T. Eugene Bull Connor would not tolerate the demonstrations any longer. He used police dogs and fire hoses on the protesters. Many Americans were shocked by the photographs and news coverage of nonviolent protesters set upon by dogs and overwhelmed by the powerful jets of water from the fire hoses. They sent telegrams and letters by the thousands to the White House calling on the president to act. Kennedy backs civil rights. In addition to the conflict in Birmingham, civil rights protests were taking place in cities from Jackson, Mississippi to Cambridge, Maryland. President Kennedy became convinced that he had to take a more active role in promoting civil rights. On June 11, 1963, Kennedy delivered a moving televised address. Calling civil rights a moral issue, he declared that the nation had an obligation to fulfill its promise of giving all Americans equal rights and equal opportunities. President Kennedy set sent to Congress a proposal for sweeping civil rights legislation. His brother, Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy, led the charge for the passage of the bill. Checkpoint. How did James Meredith and Martin Luther King Jr. prompt President Kennedy to promote civil rights? They did this by, again, kind of challenging the federal government to uphold what it had said it would do. There were certain areas where the federal government said that there wouldn't be segregation, and they were calling them to act on those words, to basically put their money where their mouth was. And that wraps up our talk about this. We will continue talking about the movement in the next video. Until then, stay safe.